A dangerous and wide-ranging weather pattern is taking shape across the United States right now, and it is going to impact tens of millions of people over the next 7 days. We are not talking about one isolated storm, and we are not talking about one single threat. What is developing right now is a multi-layered, multi-day weather setup that is going to hit the country from multiple directions all at once. An oppressive heat dome is expanding out of the southwest and pushing deep into the Rockies, fueling dangerous heat conditions, ongoing wildfires, and hazardous air quality across the Pacific Northwest. At the same time, that very same ridge of high pressure is going to act like a steering wheel, pushing a series of disturbances across the northern United States from Friday all the way through Monday and into next week, bringing rounds of severe thunderstorms capable of producing damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes to the Great Plains, the Midwest, and even the Northeast. And layered underneath all of that, a significant flash flooding threat is already in motion right now across parts of Missouri, Iowa, and the Central Plains. This is a forecast you need to hear from start to finish because the level of activity we are about to see is genuinely unusual for this time of year. Let's get into it because there is a lot to unpack today, and we need to start with the big picture. The foundational driver of everything we are about to talk about is the overall weather pattern shaping up across the country right now. At the core of it is a large low-pressure system sitting up in Canada. That system is allowing strong mid-level winds to push down across the northern plains and into the Midwest. And it is that upper-level support that is making all of this possible. When you have that kind of configuration in place, the atmosphere becomes a very efficient machine for generating severe weather, and that is exactly what we're seeing begin to fire up right now. On Wednesday, that setup is already producing a weak low-pressure system tracking across the Central Plains. That system is what is responsible for the near-term risk of severe weather today. We will walk through all of that in detail in just a moment. But looking a little bit further down the road, the really important shift happens this weekend. By Saturday and into Sunday, the Canadian low is going to force a transition to northwesterly flow across the Midwest. That change in the upper level pattern is what is going to open the door for potentially significant multi-day severe weather outbreaks across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. The GFS model has been very consistent and very aggressive in its depiction of this setup, and it is showing not just one round of severe weather, but potentially several lines of thunderstorms developing back-to-back from Friday all the way through Monday, and possibly into the middle portion of next week. This is the kind of pattern that demands your full attention if you live anywhere from the Great Plains eastward through the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. And while all of that is happening in the northern tier, the opposite situation is playing out in the southern and western portions of the country. High pressure building along the east coast and expanding across the southeast and the southern plains is going to create an extreme heat situation that is going to last well into the middle of August. The strong southerly winds associated with that high pressure system are going to pump enormous amounts of heat and moisture northward into the Great Plains, and temperatures in some of these areas are going to become genuinely dangerous. So, on one side of the country, we are dealing with dangerous heat and wildfire conditions. On the other side, we are looking at a prolonged severe weather threat. It truly is a double-edged sword, and it affects virtually every part of this country in some way over the next 7 days. Now, let's start walking through the near-term forecast, because there are things happening right now that you need to be aware of. Starting with Wednesday, the Storm Prediction Center has issued a marginal threat of severe weather across a few different areas today. The primary zone of concern stretches through central Illinois near Springfield and back into southwestern Missouri near the Joplin area. There's also a marginal threat in play across southern Arizona and another one up in the high plains. The main concerns today are isolated damaging winds and large hail, and there is also the possibility of some flash flooding accompanying the heavier storms. On top of that, there's an isolated tornado risk in the mix today. It is worth noting that the Storm Prediction Center had actually outlined a larger tornado risk in an earlier outlook, but they trimmed that area down, and it no longer extends anywhere near Kansas City. Right now, the isolated spin-up tornado risk is focused near Quincy, Peoria, and Davenport. And there is a possibility that the risk area could be nudged a bit to the north and west, where there might just be enough wind shear to support a brief tornado, but that remains to be seen. The honest assessment of today's setup is that it is a messy one. Instability values are not going to climb very high, with CAPE readings hovering around 1,000 joules per kilogram, which is a relatively low number. The heavy convection already out across the region is also going to make it harder for any organized severe weather to develop. That said, if a supercell does manage to fire up in the right spot, all the ingredients for a tornado are at least marginally present. So if you live in central Illinois, southwestern Missouri, or the Quincy to Davenport corridor, stay weather aware throughout the afternoon hours. Do not let the messy nature of this setup lull you into complacency, because isolated severe weather is still possible. For those of you near Kansas City, Springfield, or St. Louis, there's another piece of this forecast you need to be ready for. Overnight tonight and into Thursday morning, a large area of widespread thunderstorms is going to roll through. This is not going to be a severe weather event in the classical sense, but it is going to be a noisy night. Widespread thunderstorms are expected to move through during the overnight hours. And if you live in any of those cities, you may well wake up to the sound of thunder and heavy rain. There's not much you can do about it, but being aware of it ahead of time is always better than being caught off guard at 2 in the morning. Shifting to Thursday, the severe weather threat remains relatively low. Most of the storm activity is going to clear out of the Central Plains and Midwest by early to mid-afternoon, but that clearing will actually open the door for a few isolated severe storms to fire across parts of the Northeast. The marginal risk area on Thursday includes portions of the Washington, D.C. metro area and extends up through Philadelphia and into Pennsylvania and Maryland. 1 or 2 storms could produce downburst-style damaging winds and isolated hail in those areas. There might also be an isolated severe storm in Ohio or Indiana, though the Storm Prediction Center has not yet formalized any risk in those areas. If you live in the mid-Atlantic or interior Northeast, Thursday afternoon is worth keeping an eye on, even if the overall risk is low. Down in the desert Southwest, the story on Thursday, as it has been throughout this week, is the monsoon. Monsoon season is fully underway right now, and the primary concern is flash flooding. Isolated damaging winds are also possible with some of the stronger thunderstorm cells, but the flash flood threat is the dominant concern across southern Arizona and the surrounding region. If you live there, you know the drill, but this week is an active one, so stay sharp. Now let's talk about the flash flooding picture across the central part of the country, because this is a serious threat that deserves its own focused discussion. A growing flash flood risk is in place right now, stretching from the Kansas City area back through Chicago. The Storm Prediction Center's excessive rainfall outlook has a slight risk in place across this corridor. And slight risk means that scattered flash flooding is on the table, particularly in low-lying areas and areas prone to urban flooding. We are talking about several inches of rain possible in isolated locations over the next 48 hours. Virtually everyone in this slight risk area can expect to see at least a ½ inch of rain today, but some spots are going to see significantly more than that. The heaviest rainfall is going to be concentrated across northern Missouri, and that is where the most significant flash flooding potential exists. The broader storm system tracking through this area is forecast to dump at least a few inches of rain across most of Iowa and Missouri over the next 48 hours. One thing that is worth pointing out is that the various weather models are not all in agreement on exactly where the highest rainfall totals will end up. The high-resolution rapid refresh model is showing around 5 to 6 inches of rain in isolated locations through Thursday night, while the NAM model is suggesting up to 2 inches in some areas near Chicago. Other models are not showing much rainfall over Chicago at all. The spread in model guidance tells us there is some uncertainty in the exact placement of the heaviest totals, but regardless of which model ends up being right, the message is clear. The flash flood risk is real, it is active, and it is centered on northern Missouri and surrounding areas. Make sure you are driving carefully today and into tomorrow, especially in areas where water is already standing on roadways. It only takes a few inches of fast-moving water to sweep a vehicle off the road. Now, let's turn our attention to what really has our full focus as we head into the weekend and beyond, because this is where the pattern gets very significant. Friday is going to be the first day of what we expect to become a prolonged and potentially very active severe weather period. On Friday, scattered severe weather is possible, stretching from northern Iowa and southern Minnesota back into central and northern Wisconsin. The primary threat on Friday will be damaging winds, as the strong northwesterly flow from the upper level pattern starts to really kick into gear across this part of the country. This could be a more organized setup than what we have seen over the last couple of days, and even though Friday might not be the most active day of the upcoming period, it signals the start of a multi-day sequence that we need to take very seriously. Saturday is the day that stands out the most in the extended forecast right now. The GFS model has been very bullish on Saturday as a significant severe weather day, and the focus area at this point is centered on Minnesota, Wisconsin, and back into Michigan. On Saturday, all hazards of severe weather are on the table. That means damaging winds, large hail, and potentially a few tornadoes. This is not just a wind event or just a hail event. It is a setup where the full range of severe weather hazards could be in play simultaneously across portions of the upper Midwest. If you live in Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Michigan, Saturday needs to be on your radar right now. Do not wait until the day of the event to start paying attention to this. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive severe weather warnings, whether that is a weather app on your phone, NOAA weather radio, or another reliable source. Know your shelter plan before Saturday arrives. Moving into Sunday, another round of severe storms is expected to fire up, though the exact positioning of the threat area on Sunday is still somewhat uncertain. The GFS model currently shows the low pressure system associated with Sunday's severe weather sitting over Nebraska. If that solution holds, the severe weather focus on Sunday would likely shift southward from Saturday's primary area and become more centered on Iowa and Nebraska. The Ohio Valley is also in the mix as a secondary threat area on Sunday. What is particularly notable about this weekend setup is that the GFS is showing not just one round of storms, but multiple lines of thunderstorms developing over the course of the weekend, which means the threat is not a one-and-done situation. We could be looking at round after round of organized convection pushing through these areas. By Monday, the severe weather threat continues. The upper-level pattern shows a very strong and concentrated pocket of mid-level winds in place across Wisconsin and Michigan on Monday. And that kind of wind energy aloft is exactly what can take a severe weather event from being a minor nuisance to something genuinely dangerous and potentially very significant. If severe weather were to develop in that kind of environment on Monday, the impacts could be serious, and the potential for strong tornadoes and widespread damaging winds would need to be taken very seriously. Keep Monday on your watch list, particularly if you live in Wisconsin or Michigan. Tuesday is expected to be another active day of showers and thunderstorms, though exactly where the primary focus will be on Tuesday remains uncertain at this stage. And looking further into the middle and end of next week, the pattern continues to favor additional rounds of severe weather. The details become increasingly uncertain the further out in time we look, but the signal is clear that this is going to be a prolonged and active severe weather period. It is genuinely unusual to see this level of potential activity during August, when severe weather climatologically tends to be less frequent. The weather pattern that is setting up is the reason we are watching this so carefully. Now let's talk about the heat, because the heat story in this forecast is just as significant as the severe weather, just in very different parts of the country. Across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, the next couple of days actually bring some welcome relief. A cold front pushing down from the north is going to keep temperatures cooler across the northern tier through at least Thursday morning, with overnight low temperatures in the 50s and 60s across areas like Minneapolis. For perspective, that is genuinely chilly for early August, and it reflects just how strong this cool air mass is that has settled into the northern plains and upper Midwest. If you live in that part of the country, enjoy it while it lasts, because it will not stick around forever. By Friday and Saturday, the heat is going to make a significant comeback, but it is going to be focused primarily on the southern plains. Areas like central Kansas are forecast to reach temperatures as high as 105 degrees by Friday. As we move into Saturday and Sunday, the heat in the central plains is expected to become even more extreme. Some locations in the central plains, such as areas near Kearney, could approach temperatures of 115 degrees on Saturday. That is not a typo. Those are dangerously high temperatures. At that level, heat becomes a life-threatening hazard very quickly, especially for the elderly, children, outdoor workers, and anyone with respiratory conditions. If you live in the central plains and temperatures climb into that range, please limit your time outdoors during the hottest parts of the day. Make sure you are staying hydrated and check in on neighbors, family members, and anyone who may not have access to reliable air conditioning. What is happening meteorologically to produce those extreme temperatures is a combination of factors. The ridge of high pressure building across the southeast and east coast is essentially acting as a wall, preventing any significant relief from reaching the southern plains. Strong southerly winds are pumping heat northward without any mechanism to break it. The heat is, in a sense, trapped, with no frontal passages or upper-level disturbances strong enough to disrupt the pattern across the Great Plains for much of this period. A cold front is expected to drop into the Midwest sometime around Sunday, which should help cool things down again across the northern portion of the country. But the Central Plains are likely to remain in the grip of that heat for an extended period. As we move into the middle portion of next week, there's more uncertainty about exactly how the pattern evolves. If the northwesterly flow that the GFS is hinting at does maintain itself, then the northern plains, the Midwest, and the Northeast could see a very nice stretch of cooler than normal temperatures in the days ahead. That would make for a pleasant period to be outdoors, assuming you're not in the path of one of the severe weather events that will be moving through during the same time frame. While the heat story in the Great Plains is significant on its own, the heat situation across the Pacific Northwest is arguably even more alarming right now because of the wildfires. Active wildfires are burning in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho at this hour, and they are not expected to calm down anytime soon. The oppressive ridge expanding out of the southwest and pushing into the Rockies is continuing to fuel those fire conditions. The good news, to the extent there is any, is that fire weather conditions are not quite as extreme as they were a few days ago. But that is a very relative statement. The fires that are burning are still extremely dangerous, and the smoke they are producing is having a wide-ranging impact. If you live east of the Rockies, from the Midwest through the Ohio Valley, you have probably noticed hazy skies over the last several days. That haze is wildfire smoke being transported thousands of miles from the Pacific Northwest. It has been making for some visually dramatic sunsets, but the smoke also carries real air quality concerns, particularly for those with respiratory issues. If you or someone in your household has asthma or other breathing sensitivities, be aware that air quality may be reduced on some days over the coming week. If you have friends or family in Washington, Oregon, or Idaho, please reach out and check on them. The air quality near the surface in those areas is very poor right now due to the density of wildfire smoke at ground level. Staying indoors with windows closed, using air purifiers where available, and limiting outdoor activity are all recommended for those in the most impacted areas. This is a serious public health situation, layered on top of an already serious weather situation, and it deserves as much attention as any of the other threads in this forecast. Looking at the overall picture, what we have in front of us over the next 7 days is a forecast that affects virtually every part of the contiguous United States in a meaningful way. The Pacific Northwest is dealing with wildfires, smoke, and poor air quality. The Great Plains is heading into a dangerous heat event with temperatures that could approach record levels in some locations. The Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and Northeast are facing a prolonged multi-day severe weather period, with this potential for damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes on multiple days between Friday and the middle of next week. And right now, today, flash flooding is an active threat across northern Missouri and the surrounding region. This is not a one-size-fits-all forecast. Different parts of the country are dealing with very different and very serious weather threats simultaneously. The key is knowing what applies to you and being prepared ahead of time rather than reacting in the moment. Severe weather can develop quickly, and having a plan before the storms arrive is always the right approach. Know where your shelter is. Know how you will receive warnings. Have a communication plan with your family. And if extreme heat is your concern, have a plan for staying cool and checking on vulnerable people around you. We will be watching all of this very carefully as we get closer to the weekend events, and will continue to provide updates as the details become clearer. There is a strong possibility of live streams this weekend as the severe weather events unfold, so if you want to be notified the moment we go live, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and that you have notifications turned on. It has been a relatively quiet stretch of weather over the past week or so, but that quiet period is coming to an end. The pattern is about to become much more active, and we want to make sure you're informed and ready every step of the way. Another video update will be coming either tomorrow or Friday, so stay close to the channel. We will see you in the next one.